Imagine boarding a flight with 214 people, all alive, all dreaming of their destinations. The laughter of children, the rustle of newspapers, the hum of engines. It feels so ordinary. But then, silence. Lights flicker, the air grows cold, and one by one, passengers collapse as though something unseen has reached inside the cabin. No alarms, no warning. Just sudden, unexplained death. What force could take lives midair without leaving a single trace? And more importantly, why were a few chosen to survive? If stories of mystery, survival, and humanity's greatest tests capture your imagination, then stick with us. This journey is unlike any other. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tap that bell so you never miss a story that proves humanity's spirit is stronger than any unknown. And hey, share this with someone who loves a good what-if tale. At first, there was nothing unusual about Flight 214. It was the kind of journey thousands of people take every single day. Families settling into their seats, business travelers opening laptops, children pressing their noses against the oval windows. The engines rumbled with that familiar roar, steady and comforting. To the passengers, this was just another trip above the clouds. But sometimes, the most ordinary beginnings hide extraordinary endings. Somewhere between the clouds and the silence of the upper atmosphere, small details began to shift. A sudden draft of icy air curled through the cabin, though the vents had not changed. The cabin lights dimmed, then returned, like a heartbeat faltering. No one paid much attention after all. Turbulence and flickers were common in the sky. But then, a strange stillness seemed to settle, almost as if the air itself was listening. The flight attendants exchanged uneasy glances. Parents shushed their children, who suddenly fell quiet without reason. And in that eerie pause, a question hung unspoken in the minds of those sensitive enough to notice. What is wrong with this flight? They didn't know it yet, but this journey would test the very definition of humanity. The first scream came from row 17. A man clutched his chest, gasping for air, and then, without warning, he slumped over, motionless. At first, passengers thought it was a heart attack. People rushed to help, calling for a doctor. But then another body fell, and another. Within minutes, the plane echoed with cries and panic as one by one, passengers collapsed as though their very life had been stolen mid-breath. The flight attendants shouted for calm, but terror doesn't listen to orders. Mothers clung to their children, men shouted for answers, and the once steady cabin now resembled a nightmare. Oxygen masks dropped automatically, yet nothing helped. The air was not poisoned. The pressure was not failing. Every test the crew performed gave no explanation. What chilled the survivors most was the silence that followed each collapse. No convulsions, no struggle, just a quiet, sudden stillness. By the time the chaos slowed, nearly the entire cabin lay in eerie silence. Out of 214, only a handful remained alive, but trembling. Eyes darted to the windows, to the ceiling, to each other, searching desperately for a cause. Was it mechanical failure? A terrorist act? Or something far stranger, something not of this world? The survivors sat frozen, their breaths shallow, afraid that even inhaling too deeply might trigger the same fate as the others. The plane, once filled with chatter and laughter, now sounded like a tomb silent, except for the steady drone of engines and the occasional sob. Then came the first whisper. At first, it seemed like static in the intercom, a faint, broken murmur, slipping in and out of sound. But as the survivors leaned closer, it became unmistakably deliberate, a voice, speaking in a language no one recognized. Some swore it was inside their heads, rather than from the speakers. Others pressed their ears to the cabin walls and insisted the plane itself was whispering. One young woman gasped and pointed to the window. Faint lines, glowing like veins of light, spread across the glass. The shapes curved and twisted, forming patterns that looked too deliberate to be cracks. They pulsed, as if alive. Whispers and markings, signs of intelligence that no one could explain. Slowly, a chilling realization settled among the survivors. This was not a malfunction, not a weapon, not an accident. Something had entered the flight, and it was watching them. The whispers grew clearer, though no one understood the words. They felt more than heard them, like waves of thought pressing against their minds. Fear threatened to shatter the survivors, but within that terror, something unexpected began to emerge. People reached for one another. Strangers held hands. Parents shielded children who weren't their own. Even in confusion, humanity's instinct was to unite. One man stood and shouted at the unseen force, demanding answers. His defiance sparked courage in others. A nurse who had lost her husband minutes earlier began tending to the unconscious, refusing to abandon them. A teenager whispered prayers, her voice trembling yet steady enough to calm those around her. That's when they realized every action was being watched. The glowing veins on the windows pulsed brighter whenever someone showed courage or compassion, dimmer when fear threatened to take control. It wasn't random at all. This was a test. The unseen presence wasn't here to slaughter. It was measuring, observing, learning. What did humans do when faced with despair? Did they turn on each other or stand together? For the survivors, the answer would determine who lived and what message humanity sent across the stars. Time passed differently in that cabin. Minutes felt like hours, and every heartbeat was heavy with dread. Yet one truth became undeniable: the glowing patterns responded not to fear, but to resilience. When survivors shared water, when they comforted the crying, when they refused to abandon hope, the light grew stronger, almost protective. Then, as suddenly as it began, the whispers ceased. The air warmed, and the lifeless passengers, those who had fallen silent, remained still, their fate sealed. Out of 214, only a fraction endured, but the survivors weren't chosen by chance. They were chosen because they showed what it meant to be human: courage in the face of death, compassion for strangers, unity in despair. A final pulse of light rippled across the windows, so bright it blinded them for a moment. And then the cabin returned to normal. Engines steady, lights stable. The test was over. The survivors looked at one another, realizing they had carried humanity's spirit through a trial not meant for machines or weapons, but for the heart. Their message to the cosmos was clear: humanity is not weak. Humanity endures. Humanity is a force that even the unknown must reckon with. And so, the mystery of Flight 214 was never written in black boxes or official reports. To the world, it remained an accident, an unexplained tragedy. But for those who lived it, the truth was far greater. They had stared into the unknown, faced a trial beyond reason, and proven that humanity's greatest weapon was not strength or science, but spirit. Think about it. When the lights flicker, when fear tightens its grip, when the future feels uncertain, what will define us? Will we crumble, or will we rise? Flight 214 leaves us with one undeniable answer: humanity may stumble, but it never breaks. And if the stars are watching, they know now we are not prey. We are not fragile passengers drifting in the void. We are humanity. And we are ready